Hello and welcome to the Right on Crime podcast. My name is Nikki Pressley. I'm the Texas Director and Chief of Staff for Right on Crime, and I'm joined here today with Joey Comley. He's our Kentucky State Director and Tennessee State Director. Thank you, Joey, for being here. I'm very excited for this conversation. We're going to be talking about family mitigation and preservation policies. I kind of want to hear what your experience has been like in Kentucky so far with that. And, you know, we've been working on it in Texas for a little while. Representative Thompson has been working on this for quite a while, and it hasn't gained too much traction, but Kentucky is doing amazing and getting awesome traction on it. So I want to hear about your experience and how you were able to accomplish that goal.
Well, thanks for having me, Nikki. Pleasure to be here at TPS, celebrating yet another year of conservative successes across the board. So really, I don't mean to flatter you, but I essentially stole your research. It's your paper and your study and your work that led to Kentucky's effort in terms of what we're calling the Family Preservation and Accountability Act. So what we did is we took your paper and looked to see, can we gather the similar data from Kentucky? We did, and we saw immediate impacts across the board. Fiscal savings, detrimental impacts on our youth, generational criminogenic factors, and then also the increased recidivism rates that you have when people don't have that hope and that connection to the family that is stripped away from them when they go into incarceration. So I think what I'd like to do, number one, is thank you. Number two, unpack kind of how we did that. It was the interim session, so we went in and just did like an information campaign to kind of test the waters, testifying on caregiver mitigation strategies in different states. As simple as the one you have in Tennessee, that's seriously like a 4-line bill, all the way out to some more comprehensive strategies that address caregiver mitigation on the front end and the back end of the criminal proceedings.
Mm-hmm. And so what have you seen as far as Tennessee, even though it's a smaller kind of program, you say Tennessee has been very successful, right? And that's kind of what pushed Kentucky to continue moving forward after the interim.
They have. So during the interim, when we presented, we had an overwhelming number of members, both from the House and the Senate, come back and say, hey, I can get behind this. Like, I support this effort. I am pro-family, and I don't want to see criminal punishments extend to the family. I think that's the key kind of component that unites everyone across the political spectrum here. You're talking about nonviolent offenses right off the bat. You're talking about crimes that don't involve children, that don't involve, sex acts, that don't involve any number of kind of heinous criminal acts. So you're talking about a segment of the community that's violated the law, but not in such a way that makes them in any way a threat to public safety. The public, including the children within their home.
Right. I think that's really important that you mentioned earlier, kind of breaking that cycle of criminogenic behavior, right? Because when a parent is incarcerated, that child is much more likely to be incarcerated themselves and also have poorer outcomes, whether it be education or just,
mental health, social
mental
interactions.
Health, social, just less pro-social outcomes. So I really appreciate that you mentioned that. In Texas, I don't know what the language is like in Kentucky, but this is just a mitigating factor that the judge has to consider whenever they're sentencing. And so it's really still up to the judge to determine if, that person would benefit from community supervision and it would be a safe sentencing option. And also, sometimes children maybe do need to be removed from the home for short periods. But if that parent is, serving their sentence in the community, then those families can be reunited, even if it is a short placement in foster care or, a aunt, uncle, grandpa, grandma type situation. So the whole goal is family unity and taking a more holistic approach and breaking those cycles of crime.
Yeah, preserving those relationships that help folks survive beyond their failure and ensure that they don't repeat that failure in the future.
Right.
So transitioning from our interim session, we had some really awesome bill sponsors jump on we had Nick Wilson out of the House and then Julie Rocky Adams out of the Senate. And both of them come at this problem from unique standpoints. One from the standpoint of an attorney, the other from the standpoint of a mother. And I will tell you that both of them have continuously kept the children and the preservation of the family first. And we've had some struggles along the way. We've had some opposition. I think judges typically pose a little bit of opposition to this because you're dealing with terminology and findings that don't translate well into the criminal system. Judges who dispose of criminal misconduct don't often look for primary caregivers. Do they examine the obligations of the accused before they sentence them and consider all those things? And sure, absolutely. But an actual finding that parallels findings that are made in family court each and every day is something that I think judges are uncomfortable with initially. And they have to kind of be reassured that there's no bleed over, there's no applicability between your finding in a criminal court and all of a sudden that finding is now being admitted as dispositive evidence in a family court proceeding. So, and it's not a competition amongst caregivers, right? This is not pitting one caregiver against another. We're just saying, look, if you exercise that role in your family as a legislature, that's important. And it's important enough for judges to consider it.
Definitely. And this approach kind of reminds me of something that I worked on with Andrew Brown from TPPF back in 2021. Senator Parker, former Representative Parker, carried a bill that would reinstate parental rights. And a lot of that was kind of stemming from people were losing their parental rights because they were incarcerated.
Sure.
And they would still have ties with their children. Their children were still in, long-term foster care. They wanted to have some rights reinstated if it was safe and it was, wanted by both the child and the parent. And so we passed that in 2021. And this is kind of like the front end of preventing those rights from ever even becoming terminated and making sure that the family can stay intact when it's safe and when it can be a healthy environment.
Yeah, and I applaud Texas's efforts in that because that's huge. I mean, it's essentially you're saying, hey, this relationship is so valuable that even on the back end of a criminal sentence, we want people to have the ability to repair that relationship. And I think that's essential for folks, whether they are the individuals who have committed criminal misconduct, they're the criminals, or they're the impacted family members. And I think when you look at these bills, you also have to look at the fiscal impacts. I know you all did that in Texas, but in Kentucky, like the sheer cost of not doing this accrues to the tune of $74 million every year in just incarceration, and then a total economic impact of $740 million when you calculate in foster care and the lack of productivity for that parent who's otherwise incarcerated.
That's crazy numbers. So where are y'all at in the process, the legislative process in Kentucky?
So it should be heard in committee this week.
Okay.
So because I'm here at TPS, I won't be testifying, but a lot of our very able partners will. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing that advance through committee and get to the floor. I think it's got a great shot. And folks see this as a cost savings bill, which is essential in a non-budget cycle, which is what we're in right now in Kentucky. So it's not like it's adding any cost, it's actually saving money. So, and in my mind, it really is one of those bills, and you hate to say it because it's so cliche, but it is a no-brainer.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a yes vote across the board, and we haven't had any opposition that has advanced a concern beyond meeting with us. Once they've met with us, we've talked through their concerns, we've massaged the language of the bill. We have no one standing in opposition.
That's amazing. And I hope Texas can follow in Kentucky's footsteps at this point, which I'm so excited. And I hope, the bill passes in Kentucky and you guys can see the positive impacts that it can have. I mean, the breakdown of the family is really what contributes to a lot of our issues in society, whether it be homelessness or criminogenic behavior. So I will be thinking and praying for Kentucky to pass it. And then I hope Texas can do the same.
Well, Texas taught Kentucky how to fish. As it
Is that
relates
true?
to this bill,
Okay,
right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
what we'll do is we'll pass those fish back to you.
Okay,
and
wonderful.
show you how to cook them up.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you for joining us today, and thank you all for listening to the Right on Crime podcast. For more information, you can go to rightoncrime.com.